Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, viewers and listeners. Welcome to 954 Miles of Conversation, where we explore boundless conversation 1 mile at a time. Um, Tonight, uh, I have my co-host with me, Christy McDonald. How you doing, Christy? And I have a special guest, Colin Moss, out of Oklahoma City. Okay, how are you doing, Colin?
Doing well.
Good, good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Tonight's show is going to be probably one of our deepest topics that we'll probably ever discuss, and which is death. Before I even get into this topic to tell the viewers what this podcast is going to be about, I want to pray because all of us have experienced death, and the people that we asked to come on this show couldn't be on this show because they're experiencing it right now, going through some loved ones. So I'm gonna pray before we start this show. Um, God, I want you to come into this podcast and give us clarity, give us hope, give us understanding, give those who are dealing with death as we speak, give them the power to deal with those issues and cope with those issues that they're dealing with the loss of their loved one. Give them the strength to deal with the grieving process, to go through this process of death with a loved one. Watch over them as they continue to seek guidance from you in everything that you do. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Am-
That's one of the first time I ever just prayed publicly. So I have to do that because I knew how this show meant a lot to all of us when we discussed about doing it. Um, Death, and let me read something to you. The topic is death that many people find uncomfortable to discuss. This is nothing new. Everybody don't want to talk about this topic. However, this episode challenged uh, social and norms for engaging open dialogue about the inevitable of it. Eventually, the each and every one of us will face. We're going to face death. We're going to have to deal with it. As a retired detective with the Little Rock Police Department in the early '90s, when I was on the streets, I was dealing with the gang banging in Little Rock and the death, the senseless death that we had to deal with back in the early '90s that explored the city and put us nationally known for killing and gang violence. And our city was terrible. It was not uncommon for me to put on that uniform and walk out the door knowing that as soon as I pushed that button we call 10-8, which was in service, that that next call was going to be shots fired. We got bodies down, and we had to roll. That's just how it was in the early '90s. Okay, so those things took place in my early career that I'm looking at death. But that wasn't my first time looking at death. My first time actually experiencing death was in my hometown of Hampton, Arkansas. A lot of people don't understand that in South Arkansas, where I was raised and raised up, that was my first time really experiencing death and seeing someone or witnessing someone or viewing someone who had killed someone in my hometown, and they never went to prison for it. And I always wondered why. I always wondered why. And when I'm not talking about what I heard or what somebody told me or a second hand story. I'm talking about what I saw, what these eyes saw. And I saw a lot as a child. And so when I went into the police department, it was like it was a continuous thing. And then all of a sudden, as I go through my career, that's all I was dealing with. As a police officer, you're going to deal with death, whether it's homicide, suicide, natural death. You're going to deal with that. So death was not uncommon for a police officer to deal with. And as I became a detective, I did domestic and robbery, and then I was in homicide. I really saw a different light of death where I was investigating the death, and to the point to where it was like, wow, now I'm putting people in prison for killing and taking someone's life. So I have a lot of experience when we're talking about death, and I've seen a lot in death. Uh, but my experience of my personal is when my mother died. I was the at the time I was the Little Rock National Black Police Association Southern Region Vice President, and my goal was to do a memorial service for all the officers killed in the line of duty. And when I was making that PowerPoint with the music behind it at that particular time, for some reason, for some reason, when I saw looked at the pictures, I saw my mother, and I wasn't paying attention, but I was like, whoa, why I'm looking at my mother? Was that God telling me to be prepared? I don't know. Did I ignore that sign? Because shortly after that, my mother passed. Shortly after that. But I had an opportunity to go to, when she was in the hospital, to go to El Dorado Hospital at that time. And for some reason, she always desired me in my uniform. She always loved to see my uniform. And so that particular day, it was on a Saturday. I will never forget it. It was on a Saturday. I could not take it off. Could not take it off. I drove from Little Rock to Hampton, Arkansas, all the way to El Dorado, and I drove very fast. I'm not going to even lie. I did. I drove very fast to get there. And so when I walked in the hospital, I come up the elevator. I saw all of my aunts, my mother's siblings at that time that was living. They saw me get off that elevator in that uniform, and they had this look that I will never forget. It was a dead stare, like they was like, "Whoa!" And so the doctor was addressing the family, and he looks at me and says, "Are you Terry?" I said, "Yes." He says, "I need to get you back there because she has been calling for you ever since she's been in here." And I go into the room in my uniform, and the first thing she says is, "Ooh, there's my baby. There's my baby. Look at him in his uniform." And I says, "Mama, how you doing? Why didn't you tell me you was sick?" She said, "That's not important." And I'm telling something today that I never spoke about since 2006. I'm enlightening right here now. And she says to me, "That's not important. What's important is that you're here. And you remember what I told you I wanted you to do and the instructions that I gave you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Well, you need to do it. And I need for you to take care of everything because I have prepared you." I knew right then that I was on the business mind of it, on the business mind of it. And so they never told us what my mother was diagnosed with. The come the fact is, we 3-4 days in. I was from a Saturday to Wednesday. I'm talking to a nurse, and I said, "Listen, I done seen this before. I don't need nobody to pretend to me. I need to see the doctor. I need to see him right now. I need him to tell me what's going on so we can get our family prepared." And so he says, "Well, okay, I will set up a meeting." The nurse said I would set up a meeting. And he said it's stage 4 cancer. She was at stage 4 cancer. And I said, "Okay." So I said, "Let me get everybody prepared." So I went to my father and I talked to him and told him, I said, "Hey, mama's not coming home." And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Listen, she's not coming home." I said, "I got to get you ready for that." And so that was a hard pill to swallow. So, and let me put a disclaimer out here. If tears get to rolling, they just roll because it is what it is. But I wind up getting my sister, get my brother. And so I told the nurse, I said, "Listen, I'm going to make the decisions. Um, I do not want her to be revived if she goes under." But what got me was that flat line that you see in the movie when it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And when she got ready to pass, I'm right there by her side. I had a first cousin. He was, as he called it, walking her through the light. I actually witnessed this, walking her through the light. And when he was walking her through the light, he says, because his father, we called him Baby Cat, which was her brother. He said, do you see my daddy? Squeeze my hand. What's the last thing that goes when somebody dies is the hearing. A lot of people don't know that. The last thing that goes in a death is the hearing. They might not have no movement in the body, but the last thing to go is the hearing. So she squeezes his hand. She said, do you see grandma? And he goes through all the family members who have left. And so she squeezed his hand and he said, your son Terry's right here. So she squeezed my hand and he says, go ahead on and go through the light. And when he told her to go through the light, I started looking at that machine. And when I saw that machine go, mm, mm, the flat line, that is the flat line. That means no more life exists. That's when I lost it. Because I don't care how many deaths I've seen with the Little Rock Police Department or dealt with personally, nothing prepared me for that life to go across that scene. Nothing prepared for me. And then the grief that I have to deal with on a back burner from that death, because I was handling the business, so it took me a while to grieve because I was handling business. And I wind up in 2007, I had a stroke because of grieving. Because what did they say? We don't talk about death. We don't discuss it. We discuss it after the fact. It's too late after the fact. We have to talk about death. We have to deal with the issues of death, and the fact is, and get prepared for financially, burial, all the administration work that goes into the part. Who's going to be handling the business? Those people who handle the business of death, trust me, they go through a lot because they got to go through the business aspects of it first before they even start grieving, and it could take years. And let me tell you something: death and grieving does not have a time frame. Doesn't have a time frame. Just yesterday, on the 22nd of April, my brother's birthday, and I'm putting pictures. I'm putting pictures up of him, and I go through and I see my pictures of us as children with my mother in there, and broke down. Broke down. I mean, just hollered. Don't even know why I was just, screaming, hollering. And so those moments when you're not prepared for it, the grieving part, they will happen. But you got to pick yourself up. You got to continue to go, and you got to continue to fight. And you got to take that memory that they have gave you and the tools that they have left you behind, and to press on and deal with the issues of everyday life and family. You have to do that. Okay? You have to do that. And that's the beginning of my story. And I got plenty of those stories, and I got a guest on here. I want to hear your experiences of death, how you dealt with them. And I'm going to start with our guest, Colin Moss. Tell us your experience, and if you got any questions for me, please. We're going back and forth with this thing because this is a learning lesson for all of us, and hopefully someone who's viewing this podcast later and listening to us talk, maybe it will help them get through. And that's the whole purpose of this. Go ahead, Colin.
Yes, sir. Colin Moss, everybody. Glad you tuned into the podcast. Not trying to take the shine from the host here or the co-host, but hey, I'm at home. All right, it's my family, and I'm talk like I'm the family.
Yeah.
So, so I got a couple experiences, and I think with those experiences, I still at times am trying to resolve certain things. So the first one was the death of my son.
Mm.
So my son was stillborn. He would have been 16 on December 12th of last year. And, it was just one of those things. My ex-wife, uh, well, my wife at the time, she um, had carried him full term. He was 37 weeks.
Mm.
And, well, it could have been 39 weeks. It gets fuzzy. But anyhow, he was full term. And one particular day, uh, she didn't feel a heartbeat for him. And so wound up rushing her to the hospital. I drove her myself and we went out there. And, after maybe an hour or so, we were told that he was gone.
Mm.
And he was gone before he had a chance to take his first breath.
Wow.
And so I was in denial. I looked up the stages of grief. I've been to grief counseling even after that. Um, and, I think that first stage for me was denial because mom was still living then. And she said, they had, she was going off her life experience, off of things that she knew. And she says, hey, doctors don't know everything. There have been cases that uh, somebody had come back, uh, after their heartbeat had been uh, stopped for a while. And so I was kind of in that mode. And of course, the killing part about all that was she still had to give birth
Mm.
to a child that we knew, you know, he didn't have soul there.
Mm.
And I know that was insanely um, stressful and it's probably not the right word for her. And for me, there were some other things going on, which um, I was not always in agreement with at the time. Uh, but my focus then was trying to find a way to resolve in my mind and as well as give her the support she needed um, about losing our son. And you know, as the time went on, she had a friend who had recommended a uh, support group for grief, and I thought it was a good idea. And you know, I went to the group more for her, to be supportive for her. I didn't think I knew I needed some of it, but I didn't think I needed as much as she might have. I said, but I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get the tools I can to help push past that the depression. And so, and I mean, I'm one of those kind of people. I don't think I get. Most people look at me and they won't tell if I'm depressed or I may have mild symptoms, but that was like a real low point
Mm.
dealing with that.
Mm.
And the way we are socialized as men, that we have to show strength.
Mm.
And that's kind of where my default was like, I don't mind crying, but I don't want to uh take away from what she needed at the time. And so I'm not a big crier. I'm not, but I couldn't help it. I had my 2 or 3 moments. I had to let that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot more to talk about that. Um, as we're following in the conversation. But I want to talk a little bit about my mother. So, like you lost your mother, Terry.
Yeah.
My mom has been gone almost 3 years. Matter of fact, come next month, it will be 3 years on May 20th. And, you know, that's my older brother's birthday. And, you know, when I realized that, when I got the call from him at 5:35 a.m. that morning, let me know that she was gone. Because I got 2 calls. First one was around 4 something, and he let me know that she had been rushed to the hospital. And we thought she was gonna be fine. It was just another routine deal, um, where she had minor complications and she was gonna come back. Well, I got that call at 5:35 that morning.
Mm.
That was totally, and unlike you, I never saw the flat line
Mm.
because I was here in Oklahoma. And my older brother was the first kid she saw, as well as the last kid she saw
Mm.
in the hospital. And I still, I still uh, think about, you start talking about the bargaining. And I don't think I had that much of the bargaining, where it's kind of like you feel like it's your fault
Mm.
or things like that. But I have had that part where I said, maybe if I was there,
Mm.
and maybe if there was something else I could have said or done. And, you know, and I go through that every so often because we feel like we really have more influence than we do at times. And, you know, and I replay it. I replay it in my head and say, well, Colin, you knew, mom knew that you loved her. I knew mom loved me. And that's the biggest thing that helps me. It's like, mom always tell us that she wanted us to be productive citizens,
Mm.
strong adults in our lives, in society, to be participants. And, oddly enough, this death thing is part of the participation. Having to try to see about the wishes of those that are deceased.
Yeah.
So, few things I've had going for me when mom passed. One, your co-host, and I don't want to encroach on her testimony, but
Go
she
ahead.
had a loss.
Mm.
She lost her mom about a little less than a couple of weeks from when my mom passed.
Mhm.
And so when we had the discussion about her mom, and then she found out about my mom, she was able to help me with certain things that I hadn't even thought about planning for.
Mm.
And it was a big help. I needed it. So, um, you know, God don't make mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes, but a lot of times his will we don't always understand, and it hurts. Hurts like a mother
Yeah. Oh yeah.
when you see the finality of it.
Yeah.
But just trying to remember those lessons and try to remember mom as a person, and even my baby boy. I believe he knew he was loved by me and his mom because we would talk to him while he was in the womb. And man, I'll tell you, I we say grief doesn't have a time limit, and I agree with that. But when I went to that support group for the loss of my son, for me, I felt like after a year, I was ready to stop making. I didn't want to make my grief stew anymore, as they called it. Some people have been coming to the group 6 and 7 years, and we talk about twice a month. And I was kind of like, no, I don't want to. I want to be able to move forward somehow. I don't want to dwell in it, but I do want to process it properly. And I want to learn the lessons I need to learn from it. And I want to be stronger, even though it may take a long time, but I want to feel stronger
Yeah.
from the experience. So I'm sure there's a lot more I can say, a lot more I will say, but I think Chrissy's story is probably gonna help me tell mine a little better.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm gonna put this out there for the viewers. We are family here,
Yeah.
here. So Colin and I are related. We all have an Arkansas connection, which I think is
Hmm.
wonderful that we have that Arkansas connection. But you and I met several years ago, and we went to a couple of family reunions together, and we've been in contact ever since. And
Yep.
so um, I think it's great that we're sharing our stories and sharing our experiences about death because others need to do the same thing. And on this platform, we're given that opportunity to do that. And we're talking about subjects that a lot of people won't discuss.
Mhm.
And we get great feedback about it. And this is one of those topics that need to be discussed. And so, with that said, I've been, my co-host, and I can't thank. I tell her all the time. I thank her for her help, and as my co-host. But and sometimes we have a sister brotherly love, and so
Hmm.
but I'm gonna let her share her experience because she had a moment with me. We actually talked about it a little bit last week, but we talked about her experience and she had a me, and I was just responding for her. So, Christine, you got the floor.
Well, like you said, we're all family, but what people might not know is Moss and I go way back. We've been friends for a very long time, and my mom actually passed. His mom was May the 20th. My mom was May 16th. And so, uh, a week or two before his mom passed. And so I was, talking with him and kind of, telling him about my mom and what people might not know. And I think I've told quite a few people is that my mom had passed before I got to Arkansas to see her. So I was in the airport on my way home because my aunt called me, just kind of like Moss got a phone call. I got a phone call around midnight. Um, and saying that my mom was in the hospital and it's time to come home. But what I did not know, and I left with a jogging suit on from Omaha, Nebraska, to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And so I traveled and my flight was delayed. Anything that could go wrong, everything went wrong. I didn't know my mom had passed. I had totaled my car maybe a month before. So I wasn't really driving too good. And I was kind of nervous about getting a rental car. And I couldn't understand why my aunt could not come pick me up. It just didn't make sense. Or my mom or somebody couldn't come pick me up. And so I got to Little Rock and the hospital called and said, "Hey, where are you? You were supposed to be here." And I said, "Well, my flight was delayed." And they said, "We need you to get here now." So I did like you did, Terry. I drove fast as I could, and I had been a nervous wreck because I hadn't been driving. I hadn't. Moss knows this. I hadn't been driving, so I drove as fast as I could to the hospital. And what they did was they tried to resuscitate my mother. And I don't think any child should ever see a mother resuscitated. My mother was in bad shape.
Mm.
It was a sight like you had never seen before in your life. My mother had, like blood coming from her eyes. They had burst a vein in her leg. Like it was the worst sight that anybody could see. And I think I just passed out. I just buckled at the knees and the last thing I know is I was out. And yeah, I was just out, and I think I just started. I went home and I just went through the process. So I never grieved. I went through the process. My family came. My mother was buried on a Friday. I think my family got there on Thursday. I buried my mother on Friday. On Saturday, my family left,
Mm.
and I think with all of that being said, having to be there and the walls felt like they were closing in on me. And I think that me and Moss kind of, not that we didn't have a friendship, we've had a friendship over the years, but he was there for me. I think, it came and he was just kind of there. I think we went out, maybe did something, I can't remember, a casino or something, just get my mind off of things. And, uh, it was just tough. I didn't know what to do. I had buried my mother. I had went through all the process and it was just a tough time. I didn't know what to do and I stayed in that house for several months and just not knowing what to do. And I think I still feel lost at times. And then a couple of weeks later, Miles called me and he said, my mom passed. And so I returned the favor. I went right over and we got right into mode. And I mean, they were working on some things and I kind of had, told him some things that I did. And same things, just kind of was there, taking, I think, a meal by or something. But that was my story with my mom. And I had lost my dad. But the difference between my dad and my mom is my dad had made peace.
Mm.
He
Mm.
knew he was ready to go. He was ready to go. He was 96 and he was ready to he was ready. He was tired and he was at peace. And I think when people are at peace, it makes you feel at peace. So I was at peace when I was hurt, but I was at peace because my dad had, he had a beautiful life. Miles knew both my parents, and he was just a quiet, gentle soul, and he had made peace. But unlike him, my mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and she did not want to die. And I
Mm.
was in denial because she said daily, I don't want to die. And I didn't want her to die. And her best friend, Miss White, said, your mother is very sick and she is going to die. But the person that I was in denial because I thought my mother had this super strength and that she wasn't going to die, but she did. And I'm an only child, so it was difficult, and I'm still picking up the pieces from that. But that's my story, and like I said, I have the last time I broke down, it was with you, Terry, over the phone because it gets overwhelming sometimes, and I think just kind of like you were my support group, like Moss was talking about. I didn't even know that there was a support group, but I think that you've been my support group.
Mhm.
Um, and while thought I was helping you get through, well, I'll let you tell that one day, but while I thought I was helping you get through some things, it just dawned on me tonight that you have been my support group because you've been listening to me deal with all the things that I have been dealing with. And Mouse too, you've been there, listening to my story on a, you guys kind of if I'm not wearing one cousin, I'm wearing the other one. So it's not one of you. It's
Yeah.
kind of it's the other one. So I
Yeah.
think just kind of
Equal opportunity.
Yeah.
having that support system has really helped me to not break down. as bad, and really learn how to cope and deal with this thing, this grief cycle.
Do y'all? I mean, I've learned several things about about you, Moss, tonight that I know you haven't shared with me personally, but I'm glad you shared it with the listeners and the viewers that will view this later on. But when you gave the date of your mother passing, and I had an expression on my face because that reminds me of the date of my mother. It was those dates are similarity. I just don't know. I don't want to call the wrong date, but I know either we buried her on the 20th or she died on the 20th. But I
Yeah.
knew it was on the 20th. It was something that 20th is a significant date of May in my family. Where I've had several relatives who passed, and they all passed around at this particular time. So April has always been a bad month for me, depressing month, as well as Mother's Day. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you're right. You talked about, Christy. You talked about your father. My father passed away, but my father relationship and my mother relationship, we had a different relationship. So it was different for me. My mother was more closer. I was more closer to my mother, even though I respected my father. I appreciated my father, who he was, and all that. But I still, my relationship with my mother was a lot deeper um, to me at that particular time, especially growing up. Until the point I got into my career with the Little Rock Police Department, she was there the whole entire time, and I was able to give back to her. So, like this particular time frame, she loved to go fishing Lake Village, and I would pay for it. And so I actually met a lady in Hampton, Arkansas, about a week ago, to where her father was benefiting from those trips that I was paying for back then. And she was like, "Look, whatever you need from us, we're gonna help you do it because you done took care of my dad." And so you never know how things work out when you in small towns. But when we was talking, when y'all was talking, I come up um, coping. Why is it that? And this is a I know this is an open question. Why are people so afraid to have this conversation about them? Why? Why are we so afraid to have this conversation, especially in the African American community? We'll talk about something after the fact, but we won't talk about it before then. Why are we afraid of that? Can anybody want to elaborate on that?
So I think part of it is we overall as African Americans, we are superstitious. And so it's kind of like one of those things, with the Candyman movie, right?
Okay.
And we know that in theory, right? We know even the effect that movie had on a lot of people. I don't know about you, but I ain't saying Candyman's name 5 times in front of a mirror. And I, and I believe, I'm a man of science, okay? You know, not supposed to believe in ghosts, even though I do. But I don't. But life is more about science, right? But dare me to stand in front of a mirror, talk about Candyman, Candyman, and you see I ain't saying it 3 other times, okay? I ain't doing it.
Okay, I'm in a hotel by myself. Please don't do the candy man
I ain't doing it. so so
I
so
knew I knew somebody gonna make a joke.
do candy man tonight.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. It's almost like we don't want to speak on something because it's
We do
almost like you
not.
give
We
it
don't.
life
We
if
don't.
you speak on it,
We don't
and
want to
then
speak
you
on
talk about death, right?
Yeah.
it.
So it's like you don't want to speak about the Grim Reaper because he might come because you said his name.
I, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, even to the point to where I talked to one of my ex colleagues today, JC White, and we was homicide today together. And I was telling him about this show, and he was like, "You really gonna talk about that?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Man, that's good that you gonna talk about it." I said, JC, I'm gonna make it public. I hate it to make death notifications. It bothered me so bad. I just couldn't do them. I mess them up. I say crazy mess. Um, I went I went, and when you're trying to prepare somebody to tell them that their loved one has been died, has been killed in a homicide, and you're trying to get your words together, and you knock on the door, they hysterical because when a detective, a homicide detective, knock on your door at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, it ain't good news. I can tell you that now. It ain't good news. We
Mm-mm.
are not good news people, okay? So we come to bear some bad news to you. And so there was a time where I went to a house and I knocked on the door and the brother was like, "What happened? What happened? What happened to my brother?" I'm trying to calm him down. And I just hollered out, "He dead." Okay. I
Oh
did. I
no.
just hollered out, "He dead." And I was like,
Oh
I
no.
felt so bad, but he wouldn't let me get my story together. He just wouldn't, he didn't let me rush it. And it was the most embarrassing moment. I apologized for it and I beat myself up. And even my supervisor said, "Look," he said, that's an issue for you." He said, "But you got to do this. If you're going to be a homicide, this is what you got to do." And I got better at it as time was going, but it was tough for me to deal with that. To tell someone that they done lost someone, especially in a gruesome murder, because they want to know things that took place, and you're trying to figure this puzzle out. And so it was very difficult for me at that particular time. So,
And you,
yeah,
Well, I'm
Chris,
gonna go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I mean, you in a position, you trying to be the voice of reason in
Mhm,
other people's chaos.
Yeah,
mhm, mhm,
And that chaos, it's like when you open that Pandora's box,
mhm,
and I'm talking about these people coming to you because you the messenger,
mhm,
mhm,
and you have to shield yourself to a certain extent from that chaos they bring it to you because they in that moment and they not thinking about you got a job to do, right?
yeah,
They thinking more about I want to know what happened to my loved one,
right.
and I don't care how you feel about how I'm asking.
Hmm. That's true. That's true. That's true. Christy, you got something?
Well, what I was going to add to that is that y'all killing me with the candy man. Now I'm here by myself, so I might have to sleep with the
I'm
lights on.
sorry, but I had to
But
do it.
but what I wanted to add is that I think we don't talk about death, and we is because we're not really prepared. I mean, it takes, when I think about my parents and their death, they were financially prepared, they were emotionally, physically, they were prepared. And I think that sometimes that preparation, to go to a funeral home to talk about these things takes money. Buying a plot, it takes to get insurance. I just don't think we're prepared. And I'm not saying that's all people, but how often do you see people saying, "Oh, we need a GoFundMe"? That just tells me that we're not financially prepared, and we're not having these conversations. I don't know if it's because we're not emotionally tied to it, or we think that, I know that we don't think that we're going to live forever, but I wonder um, if it's a financial component to that, because my mother and my father had everything, together, beyond a wheel, because we know now that wheels aren't, really, they're good, but people can go through probate. Even though I'm an only child, my parents still had everything ready for me. I was the beneficiary upon death, on their accounts, on their bank accounts, on their homes, on their possessions, on their cars. Odie knows I totaled mine, so I got here and I started driving my mother's car. It's just, I think it's maybe we're not having the conversations because we're not financially prepared, or maybe we're not, I don't want to say educated because that seems so bad, but maybe we're not educating ourselves about what it takes to prepare for death. Because, like Ma said that we talked about, getting prepared, all the things that go into a funeral. I mean, and I think I ran down the list with him that I had just did a couple of weeks before, step one, step two. I mean, I don't know that we are having the discussions because of maybe a financial responsibility. I just wanted to add that. And I'm not sure, and I'm not saying that we're not educated and we're not,
Mm-hmm.
financial. I just wonder if that could be one of those components.
Okay. Um, so the discussion that we're having today, maybe that would probably get our viewers and our listeners to start having this conversation within their families, to discuss these things up front before it happens. Because I think we're bringing awareness to this discussion, and I don't think this is going to be the last time we have this discussion about death. I think we can have some more discussions later on about this and do some spinoff and maybe have some counselors to come on to a show and talk about it, and maybe even funeral directors, if we can get them on here and talk about some planning stages that we can do. I think we can provide that for our listeners, but we got to do something to get them prepared. Says okay, because uh, we all believe in we have a faith, right? We believe in faith, and
Mm-hmm.
the Bible talks about the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
But don't nobody want to talk about the end. They just want to talk about the beginning and the middle.
Well, we don't want to die. I mean, I
I
don't.
mean, I you know, no,
I mean,
no,
we don't know when we're going to. We don't want to.
nobody wants to die, but
Right.
I always vision, uh, that, God, when it's my term and you call up on me, at least let me see my own funeral and see who coming to show up.
Well, that's what you have to do. I think that's part of the planning. My mother had talked about her, I think when she got diagnosed with cancer, she had talked about it a little bit, but let's be real, she didn't want to die. So she didn't finish those conversations. So right now, I think it's important that you start and you write out your obituary. Because for people trying to figure out all that stuff, asking, I kind of knew who she would want to come and do her eulogy, but having, pastors, music, choices. I mean, there's a ton of things that go into planning of a services. And then if they are not financially, I think it was like $16,000, to bury my mother without saying it out loud. But I mean, it's a lot of it's a lot of money to, and that was just with flowers, paying musicians, and paying for her casket, and the things, I mean, like food, I mean, repast. I mean, I don't think that people really realize what goes into the planning stages of a funeral. I mean, you have to have programs if you're going to do a program. What kind of
Mm-hmm.
program are you going to do? My parents did not believe that once you die, God comes, you step off to heaven. They do believe in the second resurrection. So, I mean, do they want angels, and do they want to be on the steps of no, my parents would not have wanted that on the front of their programs. So all of those things you have to know. Do you know the person that you're burying? Do you know what their wishes and their desires are? I think having those conversations, but yes, I think people are, and it could be now that I'm saying it out loud, that they are afraid. My mother started talking about it, but then she got afraid. She
Mm,
stopped having the conversations. Her conversations turned to, I want to live and I'm going to beat this thing. So she stopped talking about it. But we have to be real. We have to talk about it, and we have to have this discussion. So maybe we're scared, but I mean, even though she had the financial thing down on lock, she had that locked. But on the other stuff, she was just, she wanted to live, and she didn't want to discuss it and talk about it. So it could be, and I know that I want to see. I have two teenagers. I want to see them thrive, and I want to see them grow up. I want to be around. So maybe I'm not having the discussions like Odie said, because once you start talking about them, who's gonna be next death knocking on my doorsteps? That's a real, now that he said it, it really is a real fear. So we have to be mindful that we do still know that the Bible, it's biblical, that we have a beginning and we have an end. Even though we know man knows the date nor the time, we do have an end, and we do need to have these discussions.
Yeah, we do. It's so ironic that we are having it now, but I gotta call in. I know she's very vocal. She's my godmother. Her name is Spanky Fail. She called today and she said, "I want to just call and check on you." And we just got to talking, and she didn't know anything about I was going to do this show today. And
Mhm.
she started talking. She said, "Boy, if I leave this earth," she said, "I expect you to do exactly what I told you to do." And I was like, I mean, she had my attention. And I said, why you having this discussion with me, mother? And she says, "I want you to do exactly what I told you to do." Because she said, "We're not gonna live forever. We got a time and place." And she didn't know I was gonna have this discussion today. But she said, "You gotta have," she said, I said, "Well, Mama, I wrote what you want me done." She said she had a book. She had this book she always carried, and she had pictures in it. She told me always, she said, if when I close my eyes, I want you to go get this book. She told me what a book was. And she says, "I want you to take this book to the funeral." She said, "If your dad, if you walk your dad in, and which is Pop Fail," she said, "Walk him in." And she said, "I want you to take this book." And she says, if anybody get up that's not in this book to try to say something good about me and tell a damn lie, I want you to go up there and tell them to shut the hell up.
And that's another thing right there. You know,
Another
talk
thing.
about
This was today.
people gonna be at your funeral, right? Because you
Yeah.
know there's gonna be some jokers there that you don't want. It's like I didn't have nothing to do with you in life, and now you want to come and disrespect my memory by being here when I'm dead. You know,
Oh God. I look here. I try to find the humor in everything that I do. I know we're talking about a serious moment, but this is
right, right,
people would get up there and do that. They would do things like that.
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
will act like they was your best friend up there, knowing you would want to come out the grave and set them on fire for telling that lie.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh man. Oh, you gotta find you gotta
A whole mess. Yeah, a whole mess.
Put a blowtorch with gasoline on. Oh my goodness.
oh man. See, only on 954 miles of conversation where you gonna get something like this, right? Oh my God.
Oh,
Y'all, oh my God. This is I was telling I told somebody today, I said, I think God wants police officers in heaven. He got to. Because last time the Angels got mad and they had a fight and he kicked them out. He didn't have security. He
mhm.
put them all out. I think when, when my
Get
time,
to stepping,
yeah,
like Martin said.
he gonna need some police officers to make some police report because
Mhm.
somebody gonna be trying to take them bricks. Take them bricks from the road. They gonna be.
Not liable for what these men say. I'm trying to be the voice of reason here. I'm not.
So,
Oh my God.
so, 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 so we, hey, segue into planning then, right? So, you know, my mom, like I would say a lot of black folks, you know, that have got this drawer, you know, and I remember she said, if anything happened to me, the important papers are here in this drawer, in this box, right? And I'm just speaking in a general sense, you know, because the box, I mean, it could be a cardboard box, it could be a wooden box, it could be a metal box, you know, like a file cabinet. Now that's where I got my stuff at, in
I do
file
not
cabinet.
know why I'm a part of this. I do not know. This is see,
But
I can't make this up if I tried. The boy
but
said
the thing
it
the
said go
thing
to the
is,
box.
Sister
They
Hope,
said go to the drawer. What?
Yeah, I'm just saying, people need to know where your paperwork is at for them. Whether you decide to put it in a safe deposit box, you're gonna be highfalutin with it, But people need to know where your stuff is at.
I think that's a good way to end that because you know what? I'm done with y'all. I am officially, y'all have scared me. I'm gonna be up all night, and y'all have told the people in the room, all the listeners, to get you a drawer, and put your papers, your important papers, people, in the drawer.
No, the
And
main
tell
idea
everybody
is
if
to
something
have a
happens to me.
repository. That's the main idea.
I can't. I
It
don't know
don't
how.
matter what it is. You just need to have something that gonna last and keep the stuff to where people can read it when the time comes.
He's so and he's serious. I mean, the
You
irony
know
of
what?
this is
He is actually serious about this.
I think he is.
But am I lying?
No, you're
Am
not.
I not telling the truth?
you
You're telling the
you
truth.
you you know when you put it like that, you told the truth. You know,
You
my
knew
mother
where your
has.
people's papers was at, didn't you, Christy?
You know, I think I told you about this, Miles. You know, my mother left everything kind of in order. She had little sticky notes. Do this, do that. But what she didn't tell me is that that house of hers, who was gonna work me to death.
Mm.
That's what she didn't tell me. She didn't tell me. She had a little hands and a little hands and a lot of little different things. So what you don't know, you're right. I mean, I knew where all the important I knew where all the papers.
You knew where the paperwork was at.
I was trying to
Look,
clean it up,
no,
but you know
knowing
what?
G.I. Joe said knowing is
I
half the
couldn't.
battle, right?
I couldn't clean it up. Yes, I knew where the
You
papers.
knew where the papers was at.
He's here. You know what? It's because I know y'all. I've been around y'all a little bit too long. I think
Oh my
between the
God.
two, I think I'm gonna have to take a break from the two of y'all because this has just been, and this has just been
Okay. With
fun.
that being said, I want to thank each of y'all for coming on here and sharing y'all experience. I know that you gotta have, even though you're talking about a serious topic, you gotta have some kind of humor to address it. And I think
Yeah.
there's always humor and everything. I think God loves humor. I know he's probably laughing right now in heaven. He said, "Boy, what are you doing together?"
I can't.
There's a humor.
Look,
But I
God
literally
creates
can't. I'm
irony all
trying
the
to stop.
time.
I
All
just
the
can't.
time.
I just can't stop. I'm
So
trying.
again, I'm going to close. I'm going to close this show by saying thank you for the viewers and listeners. I hope that you get something out of our experiences of dealing with death, and I hope you can, you know, take something that we share with you. You can share with your families. There's not a right way or wrong way. It's just a discussion that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
talked. And I think if you have that discussion before death happens, I think you'll be better off and ready and prepared for it. But you've got to have that discussion inside your home. You cannot be afraid of the word of death and think, we're not going to talk about it. You must talk about this subject. And so that's what we're trying to express today, awareness. Start talking about death. And I think that will help a lot of people get prepared for it and find some planning, some strategies and coping mechanism and some grieving mechanism to discuss in their families because you're going to need that process. And I think this right here, this particular group here, um, not knowing it, but we work very well together to the point to where we didn't know our experience until we discussed it tonight. But
Right.
we all have been helping one another and we didn't even know it.
That's correct.
We didn't even know we was helping one another. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but we know now. We know now. So, Moss, do you have anything left? Any closing words?
Don't make it funny. Please don't, because I'm on the
Yeah.
verge.
Well, I just like to say, first, thanks to you and to your co-host for inviting me to the show. I believe in the value of the topic and having the experience that I did. I felt like it was part of my duty my obligation as a adult, productive citizen in society to be able to speak on this with you all and with the listeners.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a good program that you've gotten started. I know you're going to be talking about a whole lot of different topics, and I hope that sometime in the near future I'll be able to share again on the platform.
I will be able to bring you back. I guarantee you that. I'll be able to bring you back on a lot of stuff. Christy, you got anything?
No, I do not. I don't.
Christy, now you have been you became the deaconess, right?
I became a deaconess. Yes. I don't know if they're gonna keep me after you told them that I eat light bread and fish, but
Well, okay.
Oh my goodness! Now see, she didn't even tell
Knows
me
I'm a
that.
7-day Adventist. So he knows you can't just go telling everybody,
Mm-mm.
you can't do that. You can't.
It's Old Testament eating, y'all. Old Testament.
But I didn't eat it. He said that I went to the place. I didn't eat it. What he
Oh,
said
but
I
you was
had.
guilty by association. What he
I
was
was
trying
guilty
to say,
because he
right?
said, "Oh, you went to that catfish place," but I was
Like,
like,
oh,
I
you
say
can't be
what?
mentioning catfish like that, cuz you can't
I
do
didn't,
that.
I didn't, I didn't, I didn't. I just let it. You know what? I just let
You
it
let it
roll.
ride.
I let it ride because it was like if I would have been guilty if I had to say, you know what? But I did have light bread and fishy.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't. He didn't say what kind. He just went on
No,
and say,
I
"Well,
didn't say what kind it was,
went to
but
the catfish house." I was like,
If it was chili and sea bass, it'd been fine, right? Because it got fins and scales,
no,
But no, but
I
see,
could
you
not.
said she had catfish stuff.
You know what he did? I could not. You know what?
oh my God.
This is so. Yes, so if I am still a deaconess when I go back home, when I go back home this weekend.
Okay. Well, Deaconess, can I ask this request for you?
Yes,
Can you close us out with a prayer?
absolutely.
Close us out with a prayer.
Okay, let's bow
All
our
right.
heads. Dear kind Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to see another day. Thank you for the friendship. Thank you for the years of friendship. And thank you for all of those who have told their testimony. And I hope that it reaches their hearts and help them to prepare for this topic of death. Thank you for just giving us the wisdom and the grace to present this topic. And I just hope that all that listen to this message receive a blessing. These and other blessings I ask in your name. Amen.
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 I enjoyed it, and we'll see y'all next time on 954 Miles of Conversation.
All right, we'll do it.
All right.
All right. Out here.